that's where we left. I was back, and I was with a huge amount of medications, and I still had panic attacks, but no generalized anxiety. It was fine. That's when I decided to change psychiatrist, and I went to a psychiatrist in the city where I live now, private psychiatrist, so quite expensive. I don't, unfortunately, I don't have any health insurance, so I had to pay it with my money. And this person basically said to me, "You're stable. We just need to reduce the lorazepam." And he made me reduce 1 milligram of lorazepam per week. The first week went well. Second week was going well. After the end of the second week, the anxiety was again same, strong, and terrible. When I asked them for help, he told me that I needed to call the NHS or my GP. So, despite the fact that I paid him, he didn't want to be my psychiatrist, basically. And my GP advised me to go back on the dosage of lorazepam that I was taking before, so 3 milligrams. And it worked. I felt fine. It didn't solve the problem, of course, but I was feeling fine. And I kept on with my course, despite the fact that I was really, really scared of what was happening. And after a while, my GP decided to, I know that sounds crazy, to switch cold turkey, basically half of the medication I was taking. So she told me to wean off the Limbitrol and the lorazepam, and she gave me 20 milligrams of diazepam. I think it was after something like few hours that I started feeling terrible, and the anxiety was back again. It was stronger than ever. I wasn't able to do anything. I was crying all the time, and I only had my boyfriend to help me. I was afraid that I wasn't going to finish my course and that my life was over again. That's when I was sent to before my GP started increasing the diazepam to a high dose, and I think it was also a dangerous dosage because it was something like 40 milligrams, but it wasn't working. That's when I was sent to a crisis team, and I was prescribed medication called pregabalin, which is an antipsychotic used for epilepsy, but also for generalized anxiety disorder. I was on 75 milligrams, and it did the trick. I felt much, much better. I was able to reduce the diazepam and take off the olanzapine. And the psychiatrist at the crisis team told me that it was a long-term cure, so basically she dismissed me, and she told me, now it's your GP that has to do the job. My GP decided to increase my pregabalin while decreasing the diazepam. And at first, even if I was feeling slightly high, I mean, hyperactive and things like that, it was going well. Then basically pregabalin stopped working, and I was sent to an addiction center, and I think that was one of the worst moments of my life, because I was surrounded by heroin addicted people and things like that, and the only thing I could think of is that, okay, they use heroin, they've been using heroin for most of their lives, but they look better than I do, they look happier than I do. Of course, the psychiatrist there didn't know how to help me, because she didn't deal with anxiety or panic attacks. She used to deal with dependencies and things like that. And basically she increased my pregabalin. At first it seemed that it was working, but I was feeling flat, depressed, not myself. Then after 2 weeks, I started feeling really strange. I was feeling like I was having a bad trip on drugs. I couldn't feel my body, and the anxiety was again over the roof. I went again to the addiction center. They told me that they didn't know what to do. I was sent again to the crisis team, and they told me that they didn't know what to do. So I booked an emergency appointment with another psychiatrist, and she reduced my pregabalin, and I felt better straight away. And he decided to switch my paroxetine into venlafaxine, and then reduce the anti-anxiety medication. Unfortunately, when I started reducing the paroxetine, my anxiety went over the roof again. So he decided to prescribe me 2 milligrams of clonazepam. It was 0.5 4 times a day, and slowly reduced the diazepam. I felt good with the clonazepam, and I was able to wean off the diazepam. At that time, I was on 40 milligrams of paroxetine. 30 milligrams of paroxetine, 37.5 venlafaxine, and 2 milligrams of clonazepam, and 150 pregabalin, which was the maximum dosage I could tolerate of pregabalin. Then we reduced again the paroxetine, and I had some withdrawal symptoms for a week, in which I felt more anxious and depressed, but it went off. And he increased the venlafaxine to 150. I was able to finish my professional diploma, and the plan was to basically decrease the clonazepam during the summer, and then take off the last part of the paroxetine, which I thought it was a little bit strange. Why not weaning off the other antidepressant and then the anti-anxiety medication? But that's what he did, basically. So the reduction of the clonazepam was a little bit tricky, even if I hadn't taken it for so long. I mean, it was just 3 months. I mean, they say that you develop a dependence after something like 2-3 weeks or something like that, but I didn't expect it to be so bad. When I got to 1 milligram, I had a terrible anxiety attack, but it went off after a couple of days, I think. The hardest part was when I had to take off the last 0.5. I was still able to go out and do things, but I had terrible withdrawal symptoms when I finished. I basically didn't stand any noise. I was terribly nervous. The anxiety was really strong, and it was just hell, basically. Everything ached. I felt like I had the flu all the time, and I was scared. I was scared that I was going to go crazy and things like that. Luckily, the withdrawal symptoms stopped. Then we had a break for 2 weeks, and I started reducing the paroxetine. When I finished, and increased the venlafaxine to 225. When I finished reducing the paroxetine, I had a new symptom. I had a constant feeling of anguish, like bad butterflies in my stomach, like 24 hours a day. My agoraphobia, though, was better. My panic attacks were better. So I was on 225 venlafaxine and 150 pregabalin. The psychiatrist told me that it wasn't the case to reduce the pregabalin, but he prescribed me propranolol, and he reduced my my venlafaxine to see if things were going any better, but they weren't going any better. I was still able to function. I was able to attend classes because I wanted to go further with my education in musical theatre, and have another chance to get an agent and things like that. I was able to get a job. It was a really depressing job, considering the fact that I have 4 degrees and 1 professional diploma. I was just working in a bakery and bakery cafe, so serving coffees, waitressing, making coffees and things like that. But I still had my lessons. But I wasn't able to feel anything. I was anguished all the time. It was just terrible. I didn't have a moment in which I felt nice, happy, something like that. I didn't have any sexual life. I didn't have a moment of happiness. And after 2 months of this life, no no effect from the propranolol, which is a beta blocker, my psychiatrist decided to do a sort of strange augmentation and give me sertraline with the venlafaxine. At first, he increased 25 milligrams. He gave me 25 milligrams, and I felt better. The anguish was slightly less strong. Then we increased to 50 milligrams, and after 2.5 weeks, I had what I think was something like a serotonin syndrome, because my anxiety went off the roof again. I was feeling terrible, and I didn't know what to do, and basically I started thinking that the psychiatrist didn't know exactly what was going on with me and didn't know what to do. And we had a Skype session, which I had to pay, and I told him that the only period in which I was feeling good was when I was on clonazepam, and he told me I might not be the right doctor for you, but he said that we could try to switch to another antidepressant. So basically, he decided to take off the sertraline and reduce the venlafaxine, and he gave me escitalopram. And he put me back on lorazepam 3 times a day. The anxiety was quite strong. I stopped going to my lesson. I was able to attend work, but it was really difficult for me. And when we built up the escitalopram dosage again after 2.5 weeks, I had that bout of anxiety, and also I started having a terrible restless leg syndrome with contractions in my leg, and I wasn't able to sleep anymore. And the anxiety was constant. I just wanted to die. It was terrible. I couldn't find a way out, and the anti-anxiety medication wasn't doing anything. After a couple of weeks like that, he decided to switch again to another antidepressant. He said it was time to try tricyclic antidepressant. Oh, sorry. So he prescribed me clomipramine. We reduced the escitalopram, and I started on a very low dose of clomipramine. It was 30 milligrams. After 2.5 weeks, I had again that kind of crisis. But he said we had to go on, so we increased to 50 and then 75 milligrams. And again, every time after 2.5 weeks, I had that syndrome. And in the meantime, he switched me again from lorazepam to clonazepam, so I was taking 1.5 clonazepam per day. And he stopped responding to my emails when I had those crises and things like that. And then he said, okay, when it stops, I started feeling better. I was on 75 milligrams of clomipramine and 1.5 clonazepam and 150 pregabalin. And he told me, okay, it's time to reduce the clonazepam. I was able to reduce half a tablet. And then he told me to reduce the pregabalin. I reduced just 25 milligrams, and the anxiety was again terribly strong. In the meanwhile, I tried to get referred to another psychiatrist through the NHS, and I was able to have an appointment, and the psychiatrist told me basically to go back to my dosage of pregabalin and increase the clomipramine slowly and reduce the clonazepam slowly. When I went back on my pregabalin dosage, I started feeling better with ups and downs. And even if I didn't like this psychiatrist that I had on the NHS, I thought that it was time to change psychiatrist, because the old one wasn't helping me anymore, and he didn't know what to do, basically. I tried to find another psychiatrist that I liked more, but the only appointment available was like after a month or something like that. So I decided to go on with this psychiatrist, and I booked the appointment with the psychiatrist. And basically, he repeated the same thing. He just said, stay on the pregabalin. We will increase slowly the clomipramine. Not now. Just give a rest to your body. Actually, no, he didn't say just give a rest to your body. He said, you're too scared to increase the clomipramine. So just try to reduce the clonazepam, and we'll see when you feel a little bit calmer if we can increase the clomipramine, and what it's going to happen after that. So that's part 2 of my story, and I will continue in the next video.